I'll begin with my presentation, and I would request all the participants, if there is any query, we'll be having those queries at the end of this session. So please note down your queries wherever, whatever queries you are having, and we'll try to address that query at the end of this session. So I begin with the presentation, and hope this is visible to all.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Actually, there are still some of the participants who are entering into the session. So there will be some kind of disturbance in between. Anyway, if you don't see the screen, please let me know. Okay. So electric vehicles, if we say, basically electric vehicles are not very new, and let me have some. So still few participants are entering, and I have to approve them. I requested all the participants yesterday to please be present at 2, but only 35 have turned up, and now everybody is coming. So my sincere request with folded hands to the participants, please maintain the discipline, because we are all from the teaching fraternity, and I request that please maintain the discipline, because now it's around 12:03, and I have requested all to join at 11:25, and still one by one someone is coming, so it is a really annoying one. So please excuse me now onwards if I don't allow the persons, because I will be concentrating on to the presentation. So basically, electric vehicles were invented around 186 years ago in 1834, but could not survive this comparison or competition with the internal combustion engine, which we call IC engine based vehicles. Because the first electric vehicle was reported in the literature in 1994, but it was actually invented in 1834. And it was a battery powered tricycle built by Thomas Davenport. But in 1900, out of 4,200 mobiles sold in US, if you see this scenario, 38% were electric vehicles, 22% were IC engine based vehicles, and 40% were steam powered vehicles. So you can see that it's a huge number, 38%. It is almost equal to 40%, which was a steam powered vehicle in that time. But later on, EVs were preferred road transporters among the wealthy elite because of the exorbitantly high cost. The important thing was that cost. So later on also we will come to the similar situation. At present also the similar situations are there still. And Ford is the first company which has mass produced the Model T while offering enhanced range of EVs at reduced cost. However, EVs almost disappeared from the market around the 1930s due to the range and cost issues. And these two issues are very important for the electric vehicle. So we'll be discussing this issue later on also. What are these issues? That it is very costly and it cannot go to larger distance. That is the range issue. So these are the two issues which were there and which are still there. Then the interest on EVs started again due to energy crisis and oil shortage in 70s. You might be aware of those Gulf War and many things sequentially happened. And then because of pollution and growing concern of environment, all the research of electric vehicles again initiated. Later on, the government also decided to join the carbon emission reduction campaign, and then they are going for electric vehicles. So this has led to a kind of improvement in the situation and growing demand of the electric vehicles, forced by the governments, forced by the law, so that the people should go more towards that. And further, the subsidies, many things, many governments are giving. So with this, this has now gone for different kind of perspective in the electric vehicle market. Now the EVs have various nomenclatures. We can say pure electric vehicle, that is PEV, all electric vehicle, AEV, sometimes they call it EVs only, that is for all electric vehicle. Then hybrid electric vehicle, which is having IC engine also, fuel cell electric vehicle, then plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, range extended electric vehicles. Now if you see from the emission point of view, IC engine vehicle, they are having this much of carbon monoxide. If you take this as 100%, then you can see all other vehicles. And if we come to this plug-in electric vehicles, then here are pure electric vehicles. There's a hybrid electric vehicle. The range of the pollution, this has gone far down. So it is almost negligible if we compare to the IC engine based vehicles. And that is the main thing which is forcing at present. What are the vehicles which you may be seeing in the Indian context? These are the first one, you can see here, e-rickshaw. Many of you might have seen this in the Indian roads. This is one of the model by a company, Mahindra. Then this is a kind of carrier model, you can say. You can see here the same thing converted to a different kind of carrier model. This is basically having brushless DC motors. So it has this kind of brushless DC motor in small ratings with all these accessories. You can say the accelerator. Actually, it's a kind of fitting solution, because usually we are having a solution which is already existing in the market, and we have to fit it into that solution in such a way that this is available to the participant, to the, you can say, users without any problem to shift from one type of vehicle to other type of vehicle. Because if there is any kind of change problem, nobody will go for that. And that is why everything is made in such a way that it fits to that solution. So this is a machine, then there is a controller, and it is all integrated with the accelerator and the speedometer concept. Here is a little bit of, you can say, open part. You can see here the stator part of that vehicle with the sensors. And this is the gear, this is the rotor part, which is fit into this solution. So this is a kind of dissection of that machine. Then other than that, there are vehicles like car. We have e-Verito. Then this is a Supro model. You might be aware of this model in the market. It is all related to Indian market. And there is E2O, there is one more car by Mahindra, and there is one car by the Tata. So there are many other companies who are making. I got these figures just to show that they are entering into this business also, and a lot of electric vehicle in car market, it is available. And if you see the comparison of these machines in Indian scenario, you can see here they are having all three-phase induction motors, their power is in the range, you can see here, 31 kilowatt, 25 kilowatt, and 19 kilowatt. That means from a small car to a powerful car. So this one is a small car and it is going towards the powerful car. Then the torque, you can see here, 70, 90, 91. Then the current range, because if you are working at this power, definitely the current range will be high. And this is the battery capacity available. So the batteries almost all are having lithium ion. I'll just show you the voltage level to these cars. And if you see here, the voltage level is very low. 72 volts in all the Mahindra models and 48 volt for this E2O plus. Tata model is also having 72. So if you are having a low voltage and the power is high in kilowatt range, definitely the current will be very high. And that is why you can have seen in the previous slide that the current was very high. You see here in the previous slide that the current is around 550 ampere and 600 ampere. So at this current, if you are having some kind of control, then definitely that control should be very precise, because turning on and off at this control will need special kind of controller. So controller is also a challenge in such a case. And then the driving range, you can see per ampere hour, you can see here, it is almost having comparable driving range. So if you see in one charge, this is going for 140 around, and this one is going for 213. These are actually, we have taken the data from their sheets. So the battery capacity in ampere hour is also given. So these things are there. And still, if we see, the distance is not acceptable, because the second part, which is the charging time, and that is very important, because usually none of the vehicles, they give the charging time. So how much time it takes for charging. So that is one concern we'll be discussing later on. And then the electric vehicles in the bus segment. Here you can see that Eicher has made a bus also, that is electric vehicle concept. It is having larger motors than these cars, and a fleet of bus you can see. So it is running in cities. Here you can see transport for Newtown, Kolkata, and in Pune also someone is having this kind of buses. And European community, European market, and in US, Canada, they are running such motors or such buses. So at present, it is available. Now, if it is available, then why it is not everywhere? So what is the main challenge? The major challenge for acceptance of electric vehicle is how to make them affordable. That is the major challenge. So there are two things. First, cost of the electric vehicle. And second is the range of electric vehicle. That means how long it can go in one charge. Now, related to these, there are certain issues. One is motor and controller. As I discussed, controller is also a very, you can say, essential part of the electric vehicle. So there are challenges to design a controller because the voltage level is too low. Batteries are having low voltage level. So if you are increasing the voltage level, then it is a, you can say, safety concern, because a person is sitting in a car, you know, in household appliances also, if you get a shock of 230 volt, it's not acceptable. Sometimes it becomes fatal. And even if it becomes 400 volt, then it will be too dangerous. So in a car, if you have such a voltage level, then it will be a threat to all the passengers sitting into the car. So from safety point of view, high voltage level is not recommended. So definitely you have to go for low voltage level. And if you are going for low voltage level, then the current will be very high. So controller is the main thing. Second thing, the motor will also be designed to operate at those low voltages, because the current will be high. So its volume may be high, conductor size may be very high. So many things are there. So these are the challenges to make them. And when the current is high, we know that if the current is very high, then the losses will also be very high, because electrical engineers, definitely they know that in transmission system or any kind of utilization system, we call that if you want to reduce the losses, increase the voltage so that the current becomes less for the same power transmitted. Here we are utilizing the power, but we know that a high voltage machine is available, which may have low current and low losses. But here, because of the safety concerns, we cannot go for high voltage machines.
So we have to go for a low voltage machine. And if we are going for a low voltage motor, low voltage machine, then the losses are integral part and we have to reduce it. So that is one of the challenge. Then the second is the battery and the ancillary services. So we are having the battery, and then how we get the other services. Because in a car, it is not only the motor. If you see in your IC engine based car, you are having a lot of things: power window, the light, the music system, the air conditioner, many more things which are associated with the the comfort and many things related to the vehicle. So if we are having all electric vehicle, then the battery requirement for other accessories also it will increase, because in a normal condition, if we say we have an IC engine which generates some electricity and we charge our battery there itself while running. That's why we are not feeling any problem, because there is a battery for ancillary services and engine is there to support the drive as well as to charge the battery at the same time. But if we are having all electric vehicle, that means all the power has to be stored in the battery. So we have to design such a system in which the performance of main drive, that is motor, and the performance of ancillary services, that should not affect. Because if it is not there, those features are not there, nobody is going to purchase your vehicle. So those things have to be kept in mind. So that is the second challenge, we say, that the battery and the ancillary services. And then third is safety and aesthetics. Since we have to accommodate large battery backup or battery pack inside the machine, so we have to keep the person's safety at the first requirement. There should not be any problem. That is why lithium-ion batteries are used, because if we are using lead-acid battery, it will be a cheaper solution. But sometimes if there is any problem, then it will create a problem for the passengers. It may explode, it may create burning. Many things are there related to that. So safety aspect is also required. And then aesthetics. If your vehicle becomes bulky, or if it is not good in shape, or if it is not good looking, no one is going to purchase it. So some research is also going on this safety and aesthetics areas also. So cost of EV is dependent on all these three factors. And if we are going for all these three factors, definitely the cost of EV may be high, and people are working to reduce the cost in the affordable range, not exactly less than the IC engine based vehicles, but at least comparable range, so that we can make a cost benefit analysis. Suppose we are paying some 2 or 3 lakhs extra for a machine, then we should get back. We can show them that yes, you are getting a payback within an attractive period if you are even doing this part. So that is very important, and this is the first challenge, cost of EV. Then second thing, range of EV. This is the most important thing, because many people are thinking even the cost is affordable. This one is a problem for a lot of areas. First is the storage capacity, because we know that in vehicle the storage capacity is very important. If you increase the storage capacity, then the weight of vehicle will increase, and definitely then the efficiency will again you can say reduce, or because it has to carry that dead weight all the time. So we have to optimize it. So optimization comes into picture with the storage capacity. Then we have a fast recharging requirement. Fast recharging requirement is, suppose we are going somewhere, say after 140 kilometers, your battery depletes. And suppose you get some kind of backup at that moment, that within half an hour, you can charge for another 100 or 120 kilometers. So that would be better, because after 120 kilometers, usually people take a break for 5 or 10 minutes. And during 10 minutes, if we get our battery charged 75 or 80%, then definitely it is going to play a very good role into the lives of electric vehicles. So that is one of the requirement, and people are working on it. And application of lot of things like renewable energy sources for the chargers, highway side charger, and many things are coming up. So these two things, range and then the cost, these two things are the main challenges. Now, if we are going with that, then the other things also, design of electric vehicle, the mechanical parts, body, chassis, power transmission, suspension, because they also play a better role for the efficiency improvement. Because if efficiency is improved, definitely the same battery backup can go for a longer distance. So we are much concerned about the range also. So the design should be having in such a way that the weight is reduced, efficiency of the vehicle is increased. Okay, then electrical parts, the main drive motor, controller, because this drive motor, it should be efficient one. So if we are having very good efficient motor, definitely it can consume less power for the same output given, and the controller will also be having some you can say losses. So to reduce the losses, then the battery management system. Maybe you are aware of some factors known as regenerative braking. Suppose we are accelerating, and when we deaccelerate, or we have the time to get that power back, that is known as regenerative braking, or if we can gain the power. Suppose we are moving on a slope and we are not accelerating the machine, but our vehicle is running at a higher speed. So at that moment, if we can regain that power, that will be a kind of boost to the battery storage. So that kind of systems are to be decided, are to be designed, so that whatever power is available during the running in between, wherever we are braking or we are going for some of areas where we get the excess of power, we should get it. Then the battery management system should be able to prioritize the things, or to use efficiently the things, efficiently the battery power. So this is very essential. Then the circuits, motors, controllers for the ancillary services. Initially, we were not thinking. If you see your IC engine based vehicle, you will see a lot of things which we replace just based on the cost. Like suppose there is a wiper motor, it is faulty, and we go to the mechanic shop, or the repair or the servicing shop, and he says, sir, we are having two machines. One is of say 5,000 rupees wiper motor, and one is a 2,000 rupees wiper motor. But 2,000 is the local make, and it may have more losses. We don't bother. We say, okay, put the 2,000 rupees motor. But that 2,000 rupees motor may have higher losses, and if it is electric vehicle, it will cost somewhere else also. So that kind of things are to be taken care of. So circuits, motors, controllers for ancillary services, that is very important while designing and while selecting. So EV motor and controller is the main part, because we know that it is the main drive which converts onboard electric energy to the desired motion, and motor is the actuating element of the electric vehicle. So amongst various motors available, EVs require a special feature. What are the special features? High torque density and the power density. Then we can say wide speed range, covering low speed creeping and high speed cruising. This is very important, because we have to overtake also in between. Then high efficiency or wide torque and speed ranges. Then other features which we require is wide constant power operating capability, then high torque capability for electric launch and hill climbing, and then high intermittent overload capacity for overtaking, then high reliability and robustness for the vehicular environment, low acoustic noise, and then the reasonable cost. Okay. So we have with us all these features. If we get all these features, then definitely we can go for a vehicle which has all these features. And there is a range of electric machines. Here we can say with the commutator and without commutator. So we call commutator and commutator-less machines. So we have with commutator all the DC machines. Now in DC machines, we know that the commutator causes the loss. So there is another category which is having permanent magnet field. But still these machines have not picked up for electric vehicles. Some of the applications were there initially, but it has not picked up. Now if we see in the commutator-less machines, then there are some machines known as Vernier machine, doubly salient. So we can say that Swiss lattice motors will be there. Then synchronous machine, it has picked up because it is having a kind of character permanent magnet rotor. And with that, PMAC and PMDC machines, they have been used in the electric vehicles, and induction, specifically the cage rotor, squirrel cage rotor, because this is also having a kind of all commutatorless construction. So because in wound rotor, still you require some kind of winding for excitation. So this one is a specifically, we can see, commutatorless motor, and this motor and the PM AC and DC motors, these motors have been used till now effectively. So if we say that the permanent magnet brushless motors, it has picked up in 60s because of the availability of cost-effective rare earth permanent magnetic material, and that is samarium cobalt and a neodymium iron and boron combination. These two combinations, we call them rare earth PM materials, and they have given very high energy density of these PM materials. So what we get, the reduced size and the losses in these machines. And second thing, it has removed the brushes, or I can say, from the synchronous machine. So the machine which is having permanent magnet, they are basically three-phase synchronous machines, but the brushes are removed, and that is why they are called as brushless machines. And they are best fit in the medium-sized industrial drives due to their excellent dynamic capability, reduced losses, and high torque to weight ratio. So if we say that it's a three-phase synchronous motor, it has permanent magnet on rotors, so these are the features. Then because of this permanent magnet, we do not have commutator and brushes, and that's why they are called as a brushless configuration. But they are fed from inverter. That is the one additional requirement. And to feed from inverter, we need certain information, because it's a three-phase inverter we'll be taking, because these are three-phase synchronous motors. So how to excite and which phase to excite when, that is decided by certain features, and that feature is the rotor position. So we have to have some kind of rotor position. So two things are additional requirement in these machines. One is rotor position sensing, and second is the inverter. So there are two categories: permanent magnet brushless AC machines, they are known as synchronous machines, and then other is permanent magnet brushless DC machines. This is also the same machine, synchronous machine, but its behavior is like a DC machine. How it is, you can see here that the AC machine, it has a distributed winding. So because of that, there is a sinusoidal distribution of back EMF as well as the current. But in the permanent magnet brushless DC machine, we have a concentrated winding. And because of that concentrated winding, the structure of its back EMF becomes trapezoidal. So for a specific 120-degree condition, the voltage or the back EMF and the current, they becomes flat. Okay. So this gives you a kind of DC machine configuration. And here, one more thing is very important, that the current directly controls the torque and this back EMF directly controls the speed. So this feature has given this name, permanent magnet brushless DC motor, because its behavior mimics the DC machine. And here it's a synchronous machine in the sinusoidal distribution. But even in both the cases, if you see, this machine needs continuous rotor position because it has to go through this sinusoidal distribution. But if you are having a permanent magnet brushless DC machine, it requires only these points. This we call commutation points. Here you can see that phase A is switched on, so the current becomes high. When the phase C has gone out, here you can see that phase C is turned off. The moment C is turned off, A is turned on, and B is continuously running. So at any moment, you can see here only two phases are active and third phase becomes inactive. Here also you can see that B phase, it is in the negative current, so it is turned off. So C phase negative current is turned on. At this moment, you see here C phase is turned on, so A phase is turned. Here it is turned off, so A phase will be turned on in the negative direction. This moment, phase A is turned off, so phase B is turned on in the positive direction. So if you see at any moment during the complete cycle, only two phases are active. So we need only information at these commutation points. And these commutation points are almost 60 degrees from each other. So this requirement is very important in this case. And this is done through this rotor position. So rotor magnet position is sensed, and this rotor magnet position is sensed through Hall effect sensors. So that is one of the requirement. And here if you see a specific permanent magnet brushless DC motor drive, this requires the sensing of the rotor position, and then the control is driven according to this. So this is a VSI, and this point we can say that the DC link, so here we can put a battery, but this battery is to be charged from the supply, and definitely the supply will be AC supply. So we need some kind of rectification, and then we charge it, and from the charged point it goes. So this is a typical permanent magnet brushless DC motor drive. And when we go for electric vehicle concept, then only the first part, this much is only applicable for the electric vehicle, because the battery is there and this inverter is required, and then the motor is required. This control has to be there. So if you see the control point of view, here you can see that this controller is assumed to be having this behavior. That means there should be flat DC current, flat voltages across this 120-degree conduction when the switches are turned on. Here you can say A1, that means upper switch of phase A is turned on. So A is having a positive direction. Till this point, second switch of the B phase is there. So B will be carrying the negative current, and here the C is turned on. So C will be carrying the negative current, but the A phase will be there. So that way the decision is made. But in real practice, actually this happens. Whenever there is a turning on and turning off of the switches, there is a dip in the current. And because of this dip, because of this drop, because the drop will be across those two switches, one is turning on and other is turning off. So this dip creates the ripple in the current, and so the ripple in the torque. So sometimes this ripple is too high and it becomes up to this point. So it's a visible ripple. That ripple will be very high. So if we want to reduce the ripple, what is done? We go for the pulse width modulation control, in which the current is controlled within a very narrow band of fluctuation. So this is a specific type of control which is used for the pulse width modulation. And the purpose of showing this slide is that you can visualize that what level of competence is required if we are going for development of good EVs with all these machines. So this kind of control is very much required. So this is basically, I can say, the electric vehicle concept. So the battery is there, then we are having the voltage source inverter, and then we are having a permanent magnet brushless DC machine. So with this machine, if we say we sense the position, then we convert the position to speed. And suppose we are having this reference speed signal, because in our accelerator, we are having this reference speed signal. So when we turn the accelerator into higher acceleration mode, it will change the reference. And at this point in real time, if we say this is a potentiometer. So suppose we have graded a potentiometer in 5 volt. So 0 to 5 volt of the potentiometer voltage will be simulated in the format of say machine is running from 0 to 100 kilometer per hour speed. And that way, when we turn it on, whatever voltage is there, that voltage will be mimicked by this reference speed, and then accordingly this controller will act based on the position. It will turn on, and so the current will change from this point to this point. So if we see this controller, I'm just telling about the schemes, how the control schemes change with the research. So here you can see that this is a scheme in which we are having two currents. That means current from one phase and current from the second phase, because we know in this machine only two phases are active at a time and the third phase is inactive. So we can say it's a three-phase machine. IA plus IB plus IC will be equal to 0, and whatever phase is available, we can get the phase current of the second phase. So if this phase is active with this, definitely we can say the current which is flowing through this, because third phase will be 0, so current coming to this point will be going from this point. If this first and third is active, definitely we are measuring here, and if both of them are active, definitely these will balance and the third current will be 0. So only requirement is measurement of two currents. So we call that sensor reduction. There is no need of measuring the current of the third phase. Now, still if we see here, to go with the next one, since the current is to be fed from this point itself, it is coming from here, whatever phase is turned on, the current is coming from this supply, and this current is IDC. If you see in your previous slide, here you can see this current is coming for any of the phase. So here also we can see that the current is coming from this point, whether phase A is operating or whether phase B is operating or whether phase C is operating. So why to measure these two? It is better to measure here, so we can reduce one more sensor. And if you see the next one, next slide, here we can say that there is a single sensor based speed control. So what we do, we have removed sensors from this side, we have put a sensor here only. And this control will act perfectly right with this single sensor also. So this kind of ideas to be evolved. If we are going to design a machine, if we are going to design a controller for a machine in which, because every sensor matters, it will reduce the complexity. If you are having two sensors, if you are having 5 sensors, and if you are having one sensor, definitely we know that with one sensor, the complexity will be reduced and the cost will always reduce. So we have to think in that way, that how we can reduce the complexity or how we can reduce the cost of the controller. So this is how we go for the single sensor. Here you can see that single sensor based control. Now here also you can see there are a lot of control elements we are using. We are using position to speed sensing, then we go for the PI speed controller, then we generate reference current, then we go for the current control also. So what happens, if we can control this current and the voltage here, we can remove all these things. And in that case, this VSI will be simply a kind of electronic commutator. So here we can say that we get a position sensing and we act as only electronic commutator, like which phase to turn on, if we can control IDC and VDC externally by any means. So this control can be reduced. And sometimes this kind of control is also there. But the condition is that we should not compromise on the performance. So for sensor reduction, modification of control loop without compromising the performance is aimed. So this is very important, that the performance should not be compromised. So that is how we go for the further sensor reduction or removal of the control complexity. Now the another machine which is taking up in this case is induction motor driven electric vehicles. So in all the cars you will see induction motors. In all the autos, that means 3-wheelers or 2-wheelers, you will see the permanent magnet brushless DC motors, because it has very simple controller. The control is very simple in that case. So if you are having such a thing, then definitely you should go for another machine. The second thing which has led to induction motor is the permanent magnets produced by China. This is the one very big thing. Maybe in Indian context also you can understand. So all the world is knowing that the permanent magnet is totally captured, or China has the monopoly in that market. So every time the researchers think that we should have some alternative machine, and induction motor is one of the alternatives, as we have seen in the classification, that if we are having a squirrel cage induction motor, then definitely this is a good alternative, because it is similar of that brushless machines. But there is a problem with the induction motor, that it requires some kind of magnetic energy, or you can say those creation of field, reactive power, because it's an AC machine, so it requires a kind of reactive power, and we do not have permanent magnet into it. So that reactive power, reactive burden creates a problem, and it reduces the utilization of the battery power. And that is the thing on which the people are still working. The second thing, induction motor efficiency, because induction motor efficiency is poor as compared to the permanent magnet machines. So people are working for high efficiency induction motor. So some design part is also there. But if we have induction motor, good induction motor, definitely induction motor can be a very good solution. So we have to have some kind of gear system with the induction machine, with the differential and wheel. So this is a configuration of two-wheel drive directly. If we have direct wheel drive or with the gear. So if it is with the gears, then this combination can be used. If it is a direct drive, this combination can be used. And finally, this machine will also have similar kind of control. Because if we know the characteristic for induction machine is a machine which never operates at synchronous speed, but it is operated in a range, and we can say that is 10% of slip. That means its speed can go beyond the synchronous, means less than synchronous speed, up to 10% only. After that, the losses will increase, a lot of losses will be there, and it's not good to operate. So suppose we have a two-pole machine, and by the configuration or by the formulas, we know that the two-pole machine has 3000 RPM. So if it is a 3000 RPM machine, then we can go maximum up to 2700 RPM, because 300 RPM is the 10% slip. Then the next one is two-pole machine, that is 1500 RPM, synchronous speed. So 1500 can go up to 1350. So from 1350 till 2700, we do not have any choice. And if that choice is to be kept in mind, we'll have only the gear arrangement. Those gear arrangements, they will have the change of speed control. But many places we know that the gear arrangement is not an efficient one. So it matters. We have to have very good gear system. So the cost and weight will add if we are having a gear system. So suppose we have a direct drive in which we can control the speed in a very wide range. That could be a better solution. And people thought of that because we know in the induction machine that the speed can be controlled by the frequency also. Suppose we change the frequency. We know that the frequency is 50 Hertz. Suppose I want 2500 RPM speed, I'll change the frequency. So with that frequency change, there is a, you can say, introduction of inverter again. So this inverter will convert this DC power into the desired frequency operation of the induction machine. And this will lead to a kind of direct drive if it's an efficient one. So the research requires some kind of intervention in the PW inverter. But in the inverter, there will be many losses because it has to supply the reactive power, then the sensors are required, controllers required. So many things are there. So as simple it looks, this scheme, actually in practice, it is not that much simple. So we have to think of the alternative things, how we can reduce the induction machine reactive burden from this. If it is reduced, then definitely your machine will act only as a, you can say, active power consumer. Second thing, suppose with this PW inverter, you'll see that when you use PW inverter, you get a kind of voltage waveform that is having high total harmonic distortion in the current waveforms and the voltage waveforms. If it is there, definitely the machine will have losses. And if it is having losses, this power is limited, so range will be very low. So we have to work on the power quality aspect at this point of the induction machine. The torque ripple should be minimum, the sensors should be minimum, the controller should be efficient, the PW inverter should be efficient. So many things are there from the inverter of the induction motor drive. The design of induction machine itself, because usually we know that the machines are 400 volt rated, all the three-phase induction motors. So here we know that it's a 72 volt motor. Maybe in future we get 96 volt motor. So if we are having a 96 volt motor with 500 ampere or some 400 ampere, 300 ampere current, then how will reduce the losses? How will control through the PWM inverter? Those things are to be considered as the challenges for the induction motor drive. So here we can see that this is a basic induction motor drive in which we have a control scheme so that we control these 6 switches. Now with this, these 6 switches, we need 6 switching signals. So we need that kind of controller. And I'll just explain a basic concept of the control which we use in our day-to-day practice. We have two kinds of control. One, we have the comparison of error with the sawtooth waveform, and other is the comparison with the triangular waveform. You might be aware, the electrical persons who are using. So here we can see that in the sawtooth waveform, there is a falling edge and it fixes this distance. That means the time period or the frequency of the PWM waveform is fixed irrespective of this pulse width. Here the lower pulse width is there, the higher pulse width, even higher pulse width. So depending on the error position, the pulse width will change. But if we see here, you can see that there is one falling edge. So it will be in relation with this. Now if we have the other one, here you can see that it is symmetrical to this central point. So if the error reduces or increases, the pulse width is increasing on both the sides of this symmetrical point. And by this, if you see, then the frequency varies. So what kind of drive or what kind of switch you are going to take? Suppose you are going for a fixed frequency control, then definitely you should go for the previous one, that is sawtooth waveform. And or you can say if you are using IGBTs, because in low frequency and high power range, we go for the IGBT, frequency is to be limited. But if you are going for high frequency, definitely the power will be limited. And in that case, we can go for this. So this is a kind of concept which is used, we are using in our laboratories for the students. So I thought to discuss it. Now coming to the induction motor drive, if you see here, whatever we have discussed by now, this is a specific characteristic, and usually we know that machine starts from this side, it goes up to this point, the peak torque, and then it operates in this negative resistance region or negative characteristic during the torque speed. So if we increase the load, that means the torque is increased. Here the value will be higher, so the slip will also increase. That means motor speed will reduce. So if the motor speed will reduce and the torque is increased, definitely it will draw more current from the supply. And if it draws more current from the supply, the speed will increase, speed up, the machine will speed up. And if it speeds up, then the slip will reduce. So the machine will come to this point. So the machine operates within this range with the variable torque, and finally it settles to a, I can say, balancing torque in that particular slip range. So this is very much required. But this is true for a particular frequency. Whatever I told about the frequency, suppose I want to operate a machine in different speed range. So definitely I have to go with the different kind of structure. Okay. Now that structure, I'll say that should be variable frequency. Suppose I vary the frequency. So with the variable frequency, my characteristics, there will be so many characteristics. And what I can do, I can operate between one characteristic to other characteristic by changing the frequency. So I can get any speed level and any torque level desired. I want to have a, you can say, the constant torque or a constant power zone. So I can go to any torque, any speed if I get to this. Now if I want to do this, changing the frequency, there is a problem. What is that problem? The EMF equation of induction machine, if we change the frequency, because say 50 Hertz is the frequency, we know that 3000 RPM is the maximum speed, definitely will go less than that. So we have to reduce the frequency. Now if we are reducing the frequency, there is a ratio for the flux in the machine is known as V by F. From the equations, we get V by F ratio. And if we don't keep the V by F ratio constant, or if we are reducing the frequency, definitely the flux will increase and the machine will go into saturation. That is a problem. So keeping that saturation into the limit, we usually go for a constant V by F operation. So if we are having a V by F constant, definitely the flux will remain same, and then the machine can be operated in any frequency range with the voltage control. But this is having a different perspective, that is known as scalar control. And by the scalar control, there are certain factors which are not controlled properly. So there is another control which is known as vector control or the field oriented control. We go for that, and nowadays all the electric vehicles, they are operating in this mode only, field oriented control or the vector control mode. In this one, we have two kinds of things. One is direct or indirect, and other is voltage or current. Then there is another method which is known as direct torque control. Now this direct torque control is improvisation of this field oriented control. So I'll go to this, and for this we need pulse width modulation or space vector modulation. So different modulation techniques are used. Now coming to this direct or indirect vector control, actually it is known as field oriented control. So if we go for a direct control means we need to measure the flux in the machine segment. At how much is the flux? Whatever flux, we are having actually three orientations. One is the stator flux, other is air gap flux, and third is the rotor flux. So field oriented control, it will be deliberated by other speakers of this FTP. I'll not be going to the detail, but I'll just want to discuss a difference between the direct and indirect method. If we are having a direct flux oriented control, that means we need direct measurement of the flux. And direct measurement of flux means we have to introduce some kind of a field coil or flux searching coil into the machine. And you know, fixing anything extra in any machine will require a lot of expertise, and it may create a problem also in the running condition. So suppose we have any search coil on the rotor, it will create a problem. If it is in air gap, it may also create, because air gap is very small in induction motors. And if it is in stator, maybe it is acceptable. So this search coil, if it is placed inside, then if we control the voltage vector of the VSI, then it is a direct voltage control. And if we control the current vector of the VSI, then it's a direct current control. So this is related with the direct measurement of the flux. And that's why in flux orientation, usually do not prefer this one, because inserting a coil into an existing machine will be a tedious procedure. It will involve a lot of things, and later on it will invite the problems because we have inserted something new. Or if the manufacturer is giving all these coils, definitely it will go for a higher cost. So there is another method which we call indirect method. Now in the indirect method, what we do, we estimate these things. We estimate the flux, we estimate many things. And that estimation can be done through its signatures. And the signatures are voltage and current of the machine, which we can easily measure. So if we just measure the values of voltage and current, and we convert these voltage and currents, or we estimate the things out of these voltage and current in such a way that the measurement is perfect, then it's called indirect, whether it's a voltage control, if we are modulating the voltage vector, and it will be a current control, indirect current control, if we are modulating the current vector. And for this process, we use two transforms. One is known as Park transform and other is a Clark transform. Actually, these two transforms, they are having conversion of three-phase quantity, which we call ABC quantity in the phasor domain, to two-phase quantity, alpha beta. Now the basic difference, if you see here, what is the basic difference? We know that the phasors are having a phasor plane which is stationary, and the phasors are rotating into that plane. So if there are three phasors, phasor A, B and C, three phases, they rotate with a specific frequency, we call it omega. Now, when we convert into two-phase domain, that means the plane is stationary and there are now two phasors only, that is alpha and beta, V alpha, V beta, or I alpha, I beta. These two phasors are 90 degrees to each other, and then they rotate in the same frame, giving the resultant value similar to ABC. Now the third transform, which we call Park transform, what it does, it converts this rotating alpha beta vectors into stationary vectors dq. How it does? It assumes that the vectors are stationary and now the frame is rotating. So you can say it's a relative motion. first we assume that there is a stationary frame and vectors are rotating. That means phasor plane is stationary and vectors are rotating. The second case, again, the plane is stationary and two vectors are there. Out of those three vectors, only two vectors, that is alpha and beta, those components are there and they are rotating. And in the third stage, what we say that yes, there is stationary components D and Q, but the now frame has started rotating, and the rotation of that frame is same as the frame which we have assumed. And here we are assuming three frames. One is called stator reference frame, air gap reference frame, and rotor reference frame. So if we are assuming a rotor reference frame, that frame will rotate at the frequency which the rotor flux rotates. And ID, IQ are considered stationary. So this is a mathematical jugglery. We are converting the things to simulate the actual condition of the rotor flux, that rotor flux is rotating, but all the currents are stationary or all the voltages are stationary. And to get the values of torque and speed from those currents, how much should be the value that we decide. And once we do it, we can revert it. And that reversion is this Park inverse and the Clark inverse. When we get ID and IQ exact values, that is the reference values, for a particular torque and particular speed, omega reference and T reference, we get ID and IQ value. Then what we do, we again go back and generate our ABC reference. And actual are measured, so the error is minimized by those PWM generators. Where you have seen in the PWM generator, if you see here in the PWM generator, I have just shown you this error. So this is the error of that current or the voltage. And then accordingly we get this PWM signal, we give it to the VSI, and that VSI gives us the desired value. This VSI gives us the desired value here, the voltage, current, and whatever is required. Based on that, the torque and speed, that is measured and it is checked. So finally what we do, we just reduce the error. So this is the basic concept. If you understand the basic concept, how these machines operate. So this is called field-oriented control. Now with this field-oriented control, you see here, there are a lot of conversions. First we convert Park and Clark, then we get the error, then we go for the inverse of the Park and Clark. So a lot of conversion is there. So some people thought of that if we can go with the reduction of all these conversions, then we can go for another method that is known as direct torque control. And that direct torque control will be discussed later. It removes all these things and it gives a simple table of optimal switching that for a specific torque increment or speed increment, speed decrement, which vector to turn on and which vector to turn off. That is direct torque control method for induction motor, and many of the machines are using this direct torque control also. So apart from that, if we see, if we can go for new electric vehicle machines, there may be some new machines also. So some of the researchers are having the focus on development of new types of commuterless or the brushless machines. Because whenever we are having a moving object, we should not have the commutator and brushes, because it will create a wear and tear problem or it will create a breakdown problem. So we don't want that any commutator or brushes should be there. So it should be commutatorless or the brushless machine. One of the class is the class of doubly silent machines, and the second is the class of Vernier machines. Now if we say the doubly silent machines, they have salient poles on the stator as well as the rotor, both. Okay. So if we have such a machine, then this SR machine, synchronous reluctance machine, is a kind of doubly silent machine having a simplest structure. There may be new class of PM brushless machines which are obtained by incorporating the PMs in the stator of a doubly silent machine. So people are using such machines. The stator PM machines rotor has neither PM nor winding. This class of machine is mechanically simple and robust, hence very suitable for vehicular operation. It can be split into doubly silent permanent magnet, DSPM, flux reversal permanent magnet, and flux switching permanent magnet machines based on the location of the permanent magnet, where it is actually located. Okay. So this class, you can just go through the literature. Some people are working on it, and you can also initiate this kind of design methods for the electric vehicle. This class can be further split into the flux controllable type, with the inclusion of independent flux winding in the stator for the flux control. Because stator, we have good control, so we can have independent flux winding. And then this is called flux controllable. So all the machines will have this FC prefix, FC DSPM, FC FRPM, and FC FSPM, whatever we have discussed previously. If the PM poles are replaced with the DC field winding, aiming to get rid of expensive PM material and provide flexible flux control, the resulting doubly salient machines will be DC, DSDC, flux reversal DC, FRDC. Okay, this is doubly salient, so DSDC, and flux switching DC, that is FSDC. So if we don't want the PM, we can even go for the machines with the field windings. We can go for this machine. So there are alternatives. You have to just think a new idea, and you have to prove that this idea is better than the previous machines which we are having. Okay. Then there is Vernier machines. The Vernier machines uses Vernier effect to amplify the output torque while stepping down the speed. This is the specific effect, Vernier effect. It amplifies the output torque while stepping down the speed. And this results in a brushless machine for a low speed, high torque, direct drive applications. So there are two kinds of machines, Vernier permanent magnet and Vernier reluctance, VPM and VR. The VPM machines are further classified as rotor PM, stator PM, or all PM type, depending on the location of permanent magnet. Okay. The rotor PM, VPM machine is most mature and commonly called as a VPM machine. You will just come to know, if you search VPM machines, you will get this is a specific type of rotor PM VPM machine. The stator PM VPM machine is known as the Vernier hybrid machine. The VR machine is structurally similar to the synchronous reluctance machine, but they operate differently. The VR machine is fed by the three-phase sinusoidal currents to produce the rotating magnetic field, and the rotor runs synchronously at a fraction of the speed of the rotating field. So this is a special class of machine which has evolved recently, and you can just go for this. Because of its inherently low power factor, an additional supply can be incorporated to feed an additional field winding in the stator of the VR machine, thus resulting in a doubly fed Vernier machine, Vernier reluctance machine. This additional field winding can be fed by AC or DC current, leading to further create a Vernier reluctance AC, VR AC, and VR DC machine. The VR and DFVR machines are also classified as emerging type of advanced machine, magnetless machines, because we are not using the magnets, permanent magnets. So this is a class of new machine which can be thought of as a new idea, and people may go for these things. One more machine, synchronous reluctance machine in the PM category. Suppose we have PMBLDC, PMSM. There is another machine in which we remove the permanent magnet. So that is known as synchronous reluctance machine. And that machine is also picking up. So that will be taken up after this session by Dr. Shailendra Dwivedi. And you'll be getting to know about that machine. Now coming to the battery charger. If we say that the battery charger, how the battery charger will go. So breakthrough in the battery technology for low initial cost and high specific energy, that is very important to have. Then the battery charging technology is extensively being researched. It is very important to have the battery charging technology. Fast battery chargers, battery swapping, and highway charging stations fed from renewable energy. These are on the offerings. This battery swapping, if you know about the Tesla Motors, they have started this battery swapping. That means the moment you get your battery depleted, you just go to Tesla shop, battery shop. They will remove your complete battery pack and they will give you a new battery pack, charged one. And that battery is covered under their cost or the warranty, you can say. Then you can have highway charging stations. The concept of move and charge, MAC, for battery charging using wireless power transfer is also on the way. So if you see the battery charging application, residential charging stations, they are having different kind of, I can say, concept. An EV owner plugs and the car recharges overnight. That means 8-hour charging. Second, charging while parked, including public charging stations. A commercial venture for a fee or the free at the parking lot. Suppose you go somewhere, you park the vehicle, put your vehicle into the hub, and it will be charged for that time. So your battery will be fully charged. Third one, the fast charging at public charging station that is greater than 40 kilowatt, capable of delivering over 97 kilometers of range in 10 to 30 minutes. This is also in the offering. Or the battery swapping, it takes only 15 minutes to change the battery. Okay. In US, there is another classification. One is level 1, in which we have 120 volt outlets with 12 to 15 ampere current, and the range is 1.44 kilowatt to 1.92 kilowatt. So the active charging element is inside the car, that we call onboard charger. That means the car should have the charging element. Okay. Then in the level 2, it's 240 volt with 80 ampere and the power of 19.2 kilowatt. This is also uses onboard charger. Okay. The third one is beyond that for the 400 kilowatt. And in this case, this is our offboard charger. That means charging facility is there. It is directly connected to your battery. So this is a kind of level 3 charger. And in India also, we are following somewhere level 1 and level 2 chargers. You will be getting these level 1 and level 2 chargers. So here you can see the glimpse. This is for the European community. This is a Japanese charging station. I can show about this renewable energy. That means there is a wind wheel and a solar panel. It charges and the vehicles are being charged. Here you can see the charging station. So these are all from the European one. Usually the charging completes in 3 stages. One stage, first stage we call constant current charging. Well, voltage rises at a constant current because the battery is depleted. So if we allow it to charge, it will draw very high current. And in this, in that condition, the battery may blast because there will be very high I square R loss across the battery. So this stage applies to the majority of actual charge of the battery. It reaches up to, you can say 70% within the 5 to 8 hours in the normal condition, not the fast one. Then the stage 2 begins when the battery reaches a predefined voltage level, and then it is used for the topping or the saturation stage, and current decreases, the voltage reaches to the charge threshold, and then we call toggle. This one is for the 30%, and then there is a, you can say, toggle. So we call that if the charger skips this stage, the battery can eventually lose the ability to fully charge due to sulfation. This is a phenomenon in the battery. Then the stage 3 we call trickle charge or float charge. So battery charges, discharges, and it maintains that desired voltage level. So these are the 3 stages of the battery charger. It is shown here. You can say the typical lead acid cell. And in the lower range, we are using still the lead acid batteries. This is the charging configuration which we can have. We can have the rectification directly with the diodes. Then we can have a controlled one, or we can half controlled, or we can have a fully controlled one. So these can be the controllers. Then when we charge through this kind of phenomena, we get this power quality problem at the battery charging application. Here you can see the THD, total Hartmann distortion of the current, is very high because the current will be peaky one. So to avoid this, we need the power quality control. And for the power quality control, we need to have certain things like the power factor, crest factor, total harmonic distortion, displacement factor, and the ripples in the DC volt within the control. If it is not, then it will create a problem into the supply. These power quality problems will have, these are the certain standards which are being used. And for that, we need these things. These are also very important. We have to have a topology selection for the converter and inverter. Then control strategy, whether we want current control or the voltage control. Then the design and simulation. We need simulation software. Then the device selection, which one to be used, MOSFET or IGBT, based on our those carrier reference waveforms. Then controller selection, which controller to need, because it will be a basis on the cost and application and how much ADC points and PWM points are required. Then the prototype development. So fabrication of the circuit. So here we can say that in the charging, this side is the charging and this is the requirement on the input side. The voltage should be sinusoidal, the current should be sinusoidal. And for that, again, we require this kind of control strategy. So control requirement is there, and in between we use a DC-DC converter. So that is very important to control the DC-DC converter. Here also you can see with the reduced sensor using the voltage follower scheme. Then if you see, there are these power factor control technologies, and lot of topologies are available. So anyone can work in any of these topologies. Lot of things are available. You can just go through single switch, two switch, four switch, isolated, non-isolated topologies, constant DC link voltage, variable DC link voltage, continuous conduction mode, discontinuous conduction mode. There is another mode which has recently come up as boundary conduction mode. In discontinuous conduction mode, normally we said that the current through that inductor should go to zero and remain at zero for a few seconds or few microseconds. Then it becomes a discontinuous conduction mode. But if it touches the zero position and again goes to high value, then it is called a boundary conduction mode. So CCM, DCM, and there can be a BCM, boundary conduction mode. So you can run for the boundary conduction mode also. And these are few, you can say, results of the simulation for the BLDC machines. You can see here the source voltage, source current remains totally sinusoidal, whereas the load is having this kind of disturbance. So here you can see the power quality less than 4.5, less than 5% of THD. This is less than 5% of the THD all the time. Going with a very good, you can say, unity power factor approximately. So here you can see 3%, 4.2% sinusoidal voltage and currents. So these are the applications. There can be some other configuration also in which we can have the voltage control on this side and power quality control on this side. So this is called two-stage control. The first one was the single stage control for battery charges. Sometimes we go for the two-stage control also. So if your circuit is not supporting single stage control, because in single stage control the bandwidth is very narrow, the control bandwidth is very narrow. So you have to go for a larger variation, and if the larger variation is required, definitely you should go for the two-stage, and then we can decide which converter. Here we have used step-up converter in the front end and the flyback converter in the load side. Battery is the load. So any converter can be used, but we have to check the benefits of the topology which we are going to use. This is a bridgeless converter, because if we are going for the bridgeless converter, some losses, conduction losses are minimized, so we can go for a bridgeless converter. The configuration can be changed. So the benefits should be obvious for going to different converters. And these are the results. You can see here the power quality results are very good. THD, you can see 3.59. Then for the implementation point of view, if you are using Texas Instrument 2812 board, we have used this one. So we need the control, and we need a kind of emulator, JTAG emulator, which converts our MATLAB simulation model. Here, this is MATLAB simulation model. So here you can see this is a MATLAB simulation model. It directly converts to the target device F2812. This is the target device. So it was not connected. That's why it was showing the bad link. Otherwise, it runs perfectly. So you can have the PWM connected to the machine, and you can directly run your control. This is the control which is designed in the simulation, and then same simulation can be used for the control of the machine. So that JTAG emulator is there. You can just see. You have to search for these things. And then comes the wireless power transfer. So I'll be quickly taking to the wireless power transfer. There are possibility of wireless transfer by two methods. One is capacitive power transfer, and another is inductive power transfer. But the capacitive power transfer uses this electromagnetic effect, uses electrostatic effect, and it requires a lot of priority or lot of precautions, but the power transfer is very low. But if we are having inductive power transfer, then it gives very good results. So most of the machines you will be looking at will be inductive power transfer type. So we have very high frequency inverter, then the charge coupler will be there, and then again the rectifier will be there, then DC-DC converter, and then the battery. So this charge coupling point, this is very important, that it should be perfectly matched with the input device so that the power can be transferred. And here we call that IPT is based on the magnetic coupling between the two coils of high frequency transfer. One coil is called charge coupler, other is embedded in the vehicle. The AC supply is rectified and converted to a very high frequency. It is about 80 kilohertz within the charger module. And then this high frequency power is transferred to the electric vehicle by induction effect. And then other side, it is again converted to AC and DC, and then it is fed to the battery. So this IPT can operate over a wide frequency range and can readily be scaled up to meet the various power levels of the EV charging. The core losses and EMI are the concern in the IPT. This is a very important thing because a lot of losses are there. For example, a well-known IPT-based EV charger, Magna Charge, delivers 6.6 kilowatt at around efficiency of 86%. So it's a very huge, you can say 14% of loss. Therefore, the efficiency improvement and the reduction of EMI can be taken up for the research in these cases. So, concluding to this session, hopefully I have covered the major areas, and we can say that EVs were around us even before 20th century, and we need special features that should be, you can say, integrated with the latest electrical networks. This is very important, that we should have an intelligent system which can easily be integrated with the modern transportation and electrical network. This is very important. So there are many things like grid to vehicle, vehicle to grid, or IoT application to EVs, and people are working on it. You will be having some lectures on it. So hopefully these 5 days will enhance your knowledge base and exposure to this area. And these are few references through which I have taken this presentation. So you can just go through that, and some of the papers, some of the reports, they are all there. Some of my papers in the permanent magnet brushless machines control areas. So these are there, you can just go through that. And thanks for your patience and listening. Now it's open to discussion. So if anyone is having the query, you can just go for those queries. Anyone? Any queries?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Vihar.
Yeah, sir. In a battery charging segment, you have discussed about move and wireless power transfer.
Yes, yes.
Prototype or available, or is that system implemented anywhere?
In Indian scenario, you will not get such system. This system somewhere in Japanese universities and the Japanese system, they have used somewhere this while moving, because there is an issue of perfect alignment.
Yes.
So,
What speed should be there to charge the vehicle or charge the battery?
yes, yes. That is the main thing. So what is happening in such a case, speed can never be controlled by the charging, because the vehicle will move at its own speed. So we have to match with the speed, and the people are working on it. So whether it is moving at any speed, see, the challenge is vehicle can move at any speed and it should get a charge. That is the challenge, and for that there are certain prototype, people are working on it, and there is a lot of I can say misalignment, because if your the base part, the charge coupler part and the holding machine, they are not perfectly aligned, definitely there will not be any kind of charge transfer, inductive charge transfer. So people are working on it.
Okay, sir.
Any other query? So hopefully everybody has got the idea.
Sir,
And,
good morning.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Please.
Sir, okay. The mileage of the electric vehicle compared to the engine, this one petrol engine or diesel engine, mileage is very good, no, sir, compared to that one.
See, we cannot say it mileage. Actually, I have shown the first slide that 140 kilometers per charge. Okay. So 140 kilometer per charge means once your battery is fully charged, it will go for 140 kilometer. Now, in mileage, normally we say in the machines that say 20 kilometers per liter of petrol or diesel.
Okay.
This is not comparable. We should compare it in the cost. And if we say in the cost, that means kilometer per rupee of investment. That means whatever charging investment you are doing, so that way the electric vehicles are very cheaper. But if you see the overall cost, then in overall cost, the electric vehicles are very high because you need the battery, and the battery has to be replaced every time after 2 or 3 years. If you are making frequent charge and discharge, then this battery cost will be recurring again and again.
Okay, sir.
So we have to take the battery cost also into the consideration when we are going for the mileage of comparison with the electric, with the IC engine based vehicles. Because in IC engine, you don't change your engine again.
Okay, sir.
Only servicing requirements are there. So for the researchers, if you are comparing, then you have to take life cycle costing will be the best one. You go for a span of 10 years or 15 years, that how much cost your electric vehicle will take and how much cost your IC engine based vehicle will take.
Okay. So one more question, generalized question.
Yeah.
When we can see our India becomes pollution free, all our electric vehicles, total electric vehicles, car or driver, anything, car, lorry or anything, vehicles, 2-wheelers, 4-wheelers. Because of pollution free is very important. Green energy, our Prime Minister initiative in green energies.
Yeah, if we see this, it depends on the commitment of the people. If we Indians are committed, we can do it in 2030, and if we are not committed, we cannot be doing it even 2100 also. So it all depends on the commitment of the people, because the commitment of the people is transformed in the governance.
Okay.
Government works as per the aspirations of the people. So if we are willing to do that, if you see this Clean India campaign, many of the cities like Bhopal, we have got Bhopal was ranked number 2, Indore is number 1 in cleanliness in all India level.
Okay, sir.
And later Bhopal shifted to some 7th or 8th place. So I am still residing here. We have seen the commitment becomes poorer. So commitment of people is very much required for that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other question, please?
नाही आता लगेच नाही करणार.
Is there any question from Mr. Siddheshwar?
Huh?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Yeah.
So, wireless charger for battery in vehicle.
Yeah.
I want to inform about electromagnetic induction type. Yeah. Electromagnetic induction type. Any other method for this wireless charger?
I told that there are 2 methods which are possible. One is electrostatic, that is capacitive power transfer.
Okay. Capacity. Okay.
So, capacitive power transfer is limited to the power range. That means if you are going for the capacitive power transfer, you need very nearby, because say electrons are to be transferred directly. Electrostatic charging, suppose you are having one body charged at certain potential and you want to transfer it from the other body. So in between there will be some kind of ionization effect between those 2 bodies, then only it will be transferred. So it is distance sensitive. And if your distance is not perfect, or if you are not having perfect alignment, then this capacitive power transfer will not be feasible. So that's why initially people tried for the capacitive power transfer, but it is limited to the distance as well as the power range. But inductive power transfer, if the frequency is very high, it can go for 1 mm, 2 mm, even 5 mm gap also. So people are able to transfer it for a larger distance.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other query?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So if there is no query, somebody has asked, can I plug my car to, just a minute, I just wanted to see that question. Can I plug my electric car into a regular outlet? Yes, it is possible to connect if your car is having those charging devices. That means onboard charger is there. Definitely you can plug it. Because then in that case, there will be requirement. Suppose you are having a plug requirement of 15 ampere. Definitely you can plug it into 15 ampere power outlet. So that is possible. Okay, so I close this session and we'll be meeting at 2:30 with our next session with Dr. Shailendra Trivedi. So it will be there at 2:30. So all participants need not to log out. You can continue, or if you are interested to leave, please join at 2:30. And there is a automated attendance procedure for our system. So we have taken the attendance, so nobody should bother. Whatever time you have logged in and whatever time you are leaving, all the things are being recorded. So we are having all those recordings. Don't worry. So please don't bother about the attendance. Okay, thank you. And we'll meet at 2:30. I'll be here at 2:25. So it is better if you can join 5 minutes earlier. Thank you very much.